Okay, so this is going to be a bit of a shorter list. Normally I don't do short countdowns like this, but I figured since I had a long video last week plus 2 countdowns last month, I say it's justified. If you recall, last year I did a list of my top 15 favorite bosses, and it still stands as one of my favorite lists from that year. However, as you imagine, I've played some more games since that list, and the bosses from some of these games would have been worthy of being on the list had I played those games at the time. And as you would imagine, that's what I'm here to talk about today. Now the rules here are simple, one per franchise, only games I've played, and no final bosses. Same as last time. And in each entry, I'll be letting you know roughly where I think the boss would have been had I played the game at the time. So with all that said, let's begin. You know, in LEGO Marvel Superheroes, the bosses were pretty fun. My personal favorite of these boss fights in the game would be the fight against Aldrich Killian and the Mandarin. Basically, how the fight works is Aldrich Killian will summon a ton of clones of himself that you have to defeat. Once you've defeated them all, the real guy appears. Obviously, you want to use this as an opportunity to attack Killian, but you have to look out for the Mandarin, who will use his powers to interfere. Once you repeat this process 3 times, then the fight really starts to get cool. The Mandarin hops inside the Hulkbuster armor, and you have to fight off a ton of Aldrich Killian's clones while the Hulkbuster fires at you. Once you take out all the clones, you start beating down on the Hulkbuster itself, and it is awesome. Why? Because all the other Iron Man suits join in on destroying the thing. Assuming I had played all the other games featured on this list as well, this boss fight would not have made my original list. But it's better than the first couple entries, so I still think it's worthy of a mention. I'll go into more detail with this in a later video, but I don't think I'm going to be causing too much controversy when I say that Batman Arkham City was the best Arkham game when it came to bosses. Arkham Asylum has one of the worst lineups of bosses I've ever seen. Arkham Origins bosses just kind of averaged out to being meh, and Arkham Knight barely had anything that I could even consider a boss. Arkham City's bosses, on the other hand, were okay at worst and really fun at best. And I'd have to agree with all the people I've seen talking about the bosses in this game in saying that Mr. Freeze is the best of the bunch. So what makes this boss so special, some of you may be asking? Well, let me tell you. In this fight, Mr. Freeze is far too powerful for you to attack head on. So you need to be stealthy and hide from Mr. Freeze while attacking him in various ways. There are 12 different tactics you can use, and you only need to hit him 5 times, but here's what makes this fight so interesting. Every time you hit Mr. Freeze, he'll make modifications to either the room, his suit, or his tactics that'll make sure that you can never hit him in the same way twice. You might sneak up on him for one hit, but then you'll have to do something different like attacking him through a window for the next hit. It's a really cool concept for a boss fight that I honestly wish more games would try. It manages to effectively use stealth in a boss fight while also forcing you to constantly change up your tactics. If I were to put this game on my original list, I would put it between Paul and Bowser Jr.'s Boomsday Machine. So assuming I had played all the games on this list, it would have been at number 10. I know some might not consider Captain Qwark his own boss fight, considering that he happens right before the final boss fight with Dr. Nefarious, but I still think he counts. So what do I like about this boss fight? Well, I think the biggest thing that I like about it is that it's a match of equals. Since Captain Qwark was also in the Galactic Rangers, he uses a lot of the same weapons that you do, such as the Warmonger and the Groovatron. Every attack of his involves a weapon that's also in your arsenal. Obviously, he doesn't use all the same weapons because, let's face it, that would just be kinda hard to integrate all those weapons into a boss fight. The fight's relatively easy, at least compared to some of the other bosses in the game, but it's still really enjoyable. I also like the dialogue from Captain Qwark in this fight. Sure, it's funny because Captain Qwark's an egomaniac, but you also kind of feel bad for him. You get the sense that he realizes that he screwed up big time by working with the biggest criminals in the galaxy, but at the same time feels like he's in too far deep and there's no turning back for him. If I had played this game at the time that I was making the original list, I would have put it right above Bowser Jr.'s Boomsday Machine. So I guess that would put it at number 8 on this hypothetical list? Yeah, that sounds about right. You know, in hindsight, it's pretty funny that I made both my boss countdowns before playing the No More Heroes games. a series that's known for its bosses. But I guess that worked out nicely because that made it so that the number 1 on my top 10 No More Heroes bosses list wasn't completely obvious. But that also means that this entry is really freaking obvious, if you've seen that video. If not, then, well, it's Bad Girl. I'm not going to go into too much detail here because I think I went into enough detail in my No More Heroes list. And to be honest, I'm not a big fan of repeating myself when the videos were made just a couple months apart. I think the batting cage gives off an isolated and intense atmosphere. I like the music that plays. I like dealing with the enemies that Bad Girl spawns. I think it's pretty cool that she lights your baseball bat on fire, and I even liked the insta-kill attack that I somehow managed to fall for despite knowing about it in advance. And while Bad Girl's not my favorite character in the game, she does have an interesting personality. If I were to put this on my original list, I would probably put it at number 4, right between Carpaccio and number 1. On this list, I mean. It would kind of be weird if it was the number 1 on the other list. But here's the question I bet a lot of you are asking. What could beat my favorite boss from a game series that's known for having awesome bosses? Well, you're about to find out. For those of you who haven't guessed it by now, number 1 is from Undertale. I enjoyed all the bosses that I faced, but there is one that truly reigns supreme among my favorites. Thanks to the number transition, I'm sure a lot of you are going to be guessing Papyrus, but come on, do you really think I would give away my number 1 that easily? Granted, Papyrus is my favorite character in the game, but in terms of boss fights, none of them come close to Mettaton EX. Right before the fight, Mettaton reveals that all the dangers you encountered throughout Hotland turned out not to be real, and it was just Alphys trying to seem like a hero. But now, Mettaton messed with the original plan and locked Alphys out so he can fight you for real. It starts off with you in the form where you can dodge attacks and shoot Mettaton, but it doesn't do anything. You just dodge and shoot attacks until Alphys calls you up and tells you to flip the switch on Mettaton's back. And that, my friends, is when the real fight begins. And let me tell you, there are so many awesome things about this boss fight. First off, I'd like to say that I really like the story of this fight. You see, with all the other monsters, they want to kill you to get your soul and give it to Asgore so he can use it to break down the barrier to the surface world. Mettaton, on the other hand, wants to use your soul to escape the underground so he can be a star on the surface and have even more of an audience. Is that a selfish goal? Yes, but Mettaton does point out that if Asgore gets his hands on your soul, he will use it to destroy humanity. In terms of Mettaton's attacks, there's a ton of variety. Some of the attacks include making you dodge miniature Mettatons, shooting at a disco ball to change what color the rays are to make them pass through you harmlessly, have you shoot at bombs and immediately dodge them, or even having Mettaton reverse his attacks. Not to mention, there's just some random out-of-nowhere things, like having you write an essay on why Mettaton's so great. But by far the most unique part about this fight is how the ratings work. Since this fight is being broadcast to the rest of the underground, everything that you do affects the ratings. Everything from the actions you take to the items you use can affect the ratings of the fight. The goal is to get the ratings up to 10,000 as well as shooting at Mettaton's heart-shaped core enough times. I was a bit concerned on my first run of this fight because I was thinking to myself, wait, shooting at his heart-shaped core? That's how you spare him? But yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. And once Mettaton's lost all his limbs and the ratings have hit 10,000, he takes calls from the viewers. And he takes calls from all around the underground from monsters who are sad that his show is ending. And he realizes that he should just stay behind in the underground because his fans don't have anyone else to watch. And it really is a touching scene. Overall, this fight's amazing. It's super unique, has great, varied gameplay, a touching story, and some awesome music. While I like all the bosses in Undertale, the only one that even came close to this one was Omega Flowey, and he's a final boss, so he's not even eligible for this list. I'm Defoffilizer, and Mettaton EX is my third favorite regular boss in video games. Yeah, I still like Captain Hook and Bertrand more.